So I've been thinking about debt recently, and it's something that many of us experience, but we don't really talk about it that much. Um, we live under advanced neoliberalism and austerity, which I theorize as a necessary component of contemporary fascist power, which is also plutocratic. It's an absolute rule by the rich. We are all, well aware of how wages and social supports have stagnated, if not been rolled back, alongside inflation in rent and commodities, which is basically the corporations using market fluctuations, pandemics, and war to increase their profits, by price gouging and creating need for their products. And, all of this brings about economic precarity, like on a mass scale. So more people are carrying more debt than ever. And debt, like being on social assistance, is seen and very often felt as a moral failure. But debt is an important tool of impoverishment that is purposefully used to repress and oppress people, to take away our agency and increase our dependency on wage labor, often shitty, unreliable wage labor that perpetuates a harmful colonial capitalist, as in fascist plutocratic system. And the pressure of debt takes away people's ability to act ethically and reduces us to hyper individuals who are consumed by our personal interest, paying down our debt. Paying down debt can even be construed as self care, which is like a profound neoliberal indoctrination and like docility. And debt is a politics of impoverishment. So, how does debt work under plutocratic fascism? The neoliberal state collects taxes from our wages and from our consumer activity and redistributes it in two directions: the social reproduction functions of the state and corporate welfare. So, the social reproduction functions of the state include health, social housing, education, welfare, disability workers' comp, old age pension, shelters. Some of these institutions are government run, and some of it are run by nonprofits in the nonprofit industrial complex sector, and they operate the carceral continuum of social services for the poor in particular. State social reproduction also includes the law, which maintains the state form, private property, and wage labor, and the enforcement of these structures via policing, border guards, prison, military, basically all the disciplinary functions of the state. Neoliberal government means a shift away from the social supports function of the states towards the disciplinary functions. So taxpayers also fund infrastructure development, which is to develop the material foundations of the colonial capitalist system, roads, industrial parks, banking sector, energy, all of the things that corporations need to, you know, build their industries so that they can get profit. And the taxpayers pay for all of this out of our wages. Now we are paying for data centers that will contribute to environmental catastrophe, for AI that may end us as humans, and complete digital surveillance and crime prediction tools that will make any rebellion from inside the system impossible. Fascism, total compliance, total discipline. These are among all the things that government, as in taxpayers, pay for to protect and advance the plutocratic fascistic system of colonial capitalism. Colonial capitalist infrastructure development is a kind of corporate welfare, as is the welfare state. Corporations can pay less wages because the state pays for much of the necessary services to reproduce the working class. Corporate welfare also includes bailing out banks and financial institutions, giving tax breaks to companies to locate their factories and bring jobs. public-private partnerships and the privatization of public services, as in worse services for more money and so on. The government pays out more than our taxes provide. So, in fact, not only are we in debt individually, but our government has gone into debt on our behalf, basically funneling all of our tax money to disciplinary functions of the state and to corporate welfare. We know that it is actually cheaper for the government to provide robust social services, housing, healthcare, education, community, resourcing communities and community support. It's cheaper to do all those things than it is to fund the police, prisons, the military, etc. After we have paid for all of our survival needs, basically money that goes back to corporations and landlords, we put whatever is left over into the bank. And then the bank gives that money to corporations who produce commodities that we buy. And they invest in corporations and governments who are destroying the basis of our livelihoods. Banks also make money off of the people by charging interest on loans. People who are just like borrowing money to try to maintain themselves, or maybe get ahead a little bit. So while money lenders are there to gouge the poor. So it's like a two-tiered system between working middle class and the lumpen. And of course, the poorer you are, the more you pay. So why are we poor? Because we're selling our labor for very cheap, or we're unwaged, and every dime we make goes to lining the pockets of governments, banks, and corporations, who then unleash a disciplinary system against us if we fail to comply. Like, all of our money is trickling up. But this doesn't happen only to us, it happens, to the world. Colonial capitalism suffers no alternative anywhere. It must dominate. It must use it's hard to say. It must use fascistic power to prevent the system as a whole from falling. The war in West Asia is a war of impoverishment, a war to create failed nations which must bow down to colonial capitalism or imperial capitalism under military threat of autocratic violence. Disaster capitalism tells us that societal destruction is the ground of profit. Gentrification happens when communities are denied resources. That is, they are impoverished. Then properties are seen to be degraded and inhabited by sketchy people, the lumpen. And this makes them ripe for profits on the housing and condo markets, while, the people are displaced. And the fascists want to gentrify Gaza. So debt, both individual and state, is vital to the survival of colonial capitalism, plutocratic fascism. The poorer we are, the more compliant we are. We pay for our own imprisonment in a system that does not serve the people or the planet. Debt is an imagined system. It actually means nothing. So is money. It's a contract, an agreement, not an actual thing. It's the power that money organizes that is the problem. The US petrodollar now dragging nations and peoples into war to maintain its dominance. With crypto and the separation of the dollar from material substances like gold means that the powerful can just print money, or they don't even have to print it. It's just a number in a column in their cooked books. There is way more money on paper than there is in actual currency. So the whole thing's a scam. You can be a trillionaire on paper and you use that to manipulate the system, but it's not an actual thing. So at least don't feel shame about debt. Maybe even think about going into as much debt as possible. File bankruptcy or consumer proposals and default. Most of all, don't be afraid of poverty. Fight zero policy on encampments because that's where the system is sending us. Fight the OPS, the overdose prevention site closures, because these are sites of love and community that value life, and, that value life more than the status quo colonial capitalist society does, and be in deep solidarity with Indigenous sovereignty and land back struggles. Indigenous resurgence holds the truth of this system, its history, its fascism, and it also holds the way out. So, those are my thoughts right now on debt.